Welcome to the Cold Turkey Podcast. This week, I'm with Cassie. Cassie has an introvert parkour. She was kind of all within herself. Judging herself and inflicting herself. A lot of pain and a lot of suffering through her own. Actually, judging herself and quite rough. And it was an interesting conversation around that theme. How do you perceive yourself and how do you see the way you kind of twist the way people perceives you. And I love talking to Cassie about that. And she's now embraced what she is, which is an artist, and can't wait for you to listen to her. Like I do every week, I encourage you to share the podcast, let your social media know about the podcast. And without further ado, here's Cassie. Enjoy. Hi, Cassie. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's funny. Just before recording, I told you that, my first question will be, where are you located and how's the pandemic going for you? And I would say that, the only exception to when you ask me what I'm doing is pretty much except for the fucking pandemic.
Yeah.
I'm doing phenomenal, so we're stuck home, I can't, I can't anymore, so yeah, where are you located?
So I'm in the middle of New York's in a city called Utica. I actually, when pandemic started, I was living in California attending treatment. So I was around people then, but I just saw the people within my group. We started doing virtual groups instead of meeting in person. So that was really interesting for me. And then because of the pandemic, employment has been really odd. So I just decided to move back home, and I'm currently living with my mom right now in Utica, but this is the house I grew up in, and it's been kind of nice. But the pandemic is making it hard. It's making it hard to see people and get out to meetings.
It's crazy.
And
Zoom is what is
my best friend.
What is the ruling as we speak right now? We're almost December, or last few days of November. What is the ruling in terms of meeting gatherings? Attending any of these group gathering. What are the rules right now?
We can't, no leaving the house except for essential business. Most companies are working from home right now. Thanksgiving and Christmas, we're encouraged not to see our families and to set up Zoom calls. So, it's pretty much only leave the house if you really, really have to go. And we're doing a lot of Instacart orders instead of going into the stores.
Yep.
We didn't meet for Thanksgiving. We just all sat on a Zoom call, my family and I, and ate separately.
Ugh. Sorry.
Yeah.
Ugh.
It was different.
A Zoom fondue or a Zoom turkey. Ugh. That's have meeting been labeled? Because I spoke to someone else in the U.S. and they were able to actually label the meetings. AA and NA and all of these meetings. They were labeled essential services. Were you able? Was the city of New York or the state of New York able to label the meeting groups as essential services?
I'm not sure. I know there are a few meetings that have started meeting in person again, using really strict precautions, wearing masks and
Yep.
sitting their chairs like 6 feet apart. But I've been just doing Zoom meetings. There's like a huge database of meetings pretty much all day long that you can go on. And it's kind of been neat because I've been meeting people from all over the world, really, just from the comfort of my own home. So it's really interesting to get like a fresh perspective from other sober people that don't necessarily live in my area. It's cool.
Someone told me about an app called In the Rooms. Is that it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's a website, I think. So
yeah,
you just
there's a phone app for it. You know, like that's the beauty of that.
Oh, I didn't even
it's
know.
crazy. Yeah, and I didn't know about this. So right at the beginning of the pandemic, I did like the pandemic fiesta with a few folks from the U.S. And I think we were 4, one in California, one in Florida, one in Toronto, and me.
That's so cool.
And someone told me about that because my first few Zoom meetings, I was just in shock. Like not necessarily, I'm not the big hugger type. Like I don't, like necessarily, but the vibe of a room, I would definitely feed on it. Like I've always loved feeding on that and missing this. Like actually on a Zoom meeting. So.
Right.
So someone told me, he's like, yeah, but like, have you tried in the rooms? And I was like, no. And he's like, well, you can have a meeting like in New Zealand and it's so awesome. Like you make new friends and all that, like I've tried a few times, but like I have to admit that, like if it wasn't for having really close friends, that I can actually, like talk to that, like knows about, not only my sobriety, but knows about, like the movement of like any anonymous meetings, I probably would have a much harder time, like which did you know about meetings before, Cassie, or like it was kind of a new thing for you at the time when pandemic hit?
No, I knew about meetings. I've been going to meetings for a while. So June 14th of 2019 is my sobriety date.
Okay.
But back in 2013, there was a time when I tried and I was 7 months sober. So I've known about AA and the rooms and NA, CA since then. So
yeah,
I've throughout the years kind of come and gone. This is a whole new life I'm living right now, though, with my longest running sobriety date. It's almost a year and a half. And I couldn't do it without like going to as many meetings as I do.
Yeah. And it's, like I spoke to someone that I think she had 3 weeks clean. She was in BC and she only had 3 weeks clean before the shit hit the fan. And, and so she was, I guess life is almost miraculous as it is, like she had enough time in those 3 weeks to build like a network of contacts that she trusted enough to reach out to. And I was so blown away. I was like, oh my God, like I'm much, much more of an introvert, like it would have it took me 3 years mostly, to build my own network. But yeah, I mean, like I was not only impressed, but just, I mean, that was phenomenal. Like, and so now, like our new reality is that, well, meetings can be fully virtual and I'm good. I'm like, okay. Like I was quite impressed by it. And so I guess, like people are going to get used to that. And, like I don't see, and at the same time, like I love the fact that you can actually reach out to people that would be too far away from a meeting room, or like that it would be too tough for them to travel down to a few meetings a week. Like 1 traveling, 2 traveling would be enough for a week, but with virtual, you can actually attend a few meetings a day, which is again, like a great thing. And so here in Quebec, they've decided that if there's a few meetings that are 7 days a week that are never going to be shut down, even after all of that rolls out. So we'll see. Like I think, I think it has forced an adaptation to something that was long due.
Mhm.
And my guess is that it's still missing, like it's still missing like an online presence. I don't see much of the official authorities, like the AA, like you see groups talking about
Right.
it, but like you don't see AA having like, and like some that are, like our vid listeners are going to be just fed up by me saying it, but one thing that I'm missing right now is, like, as we still have that newspaper clip of AA in the classifieds. I don't see,
Oh,
like I don't see ads in Facebook or Instagram
no, it's
for,
like a lot of word of mouth. You just have to
yeah,
know the right people, I guess.
which, like I'm 45. So, like I know what newspaper is, but, like my guess is that, like my son and grandson and, like I have a 5-year-old, like you won't know what, like what, you won't read the classifieds in the newspaper, like, so,
No,
so
you probably won't even get it.
yeah, exactly. So for me, like even, like that the generation following myself, like are not even plugging in, like on TV, like, so they don't get cable. And so how are we going to, like, these organizations are going to reach out to, like the next addict, like the next addict, like, so for me, it's just, like the as virtual and the pandemic has forced and encouraged and pretty much forced the implementation of, virtual meetings. I guess I think, like it has to be, reflected furthermore into, okay, now that we're virtual, how do we reach out to, like our kids, like the younger ones that are not reading the newspaper, that are definitely not watching TV. Something has need to be, and my sponsor would give me shit right now saying, well, get involved and fix it, so he's right.
Yeah. I was going to say the other cool thing is I'm actually part of the I'm in recovery from eating disorders, and because of COVID, Instagram put a group together where you can go online at any time and eat with people face to face. If you want to have your snacks, if you feel more comfortable eating your snacks or your meals, like in the company of other people, like literally anytime you go on, and it's like a COVID-19 eating disorder group. It's really great.
Wow. And I didn't know about this. So, okay, I got to keep this in mind because I have questions around that.
Yeah.
But I'm going to, like, I don't want to waste any time. I'm going to rewind your life story tape and bring me back to either your own substance contact, like your own first substance contact, or a situation where, like someone else has used that has impacted you that you can remember from when you were younger.
Mm-hmm. So I was I kind of grew up in a weird situation because nobody in my family drank or used drugs or had any addictions whatsoever. So I didn't grow up around it. And for the longest time, I didn't drink. Like in high school, I didn't drink, but I had the hardest time fitting in. I always felt like I was on the outside looking in, and just really struggled. Felt like a loser, like cried myself to sleep every night. And I went to college, and all I wanted to do was come home and just see my mom and see my the guy I was dating who lived at home at the time. I wasn't really putting in any eggs into the college basket, and I wasn't making any friends, and it wasn't fun for me. It was miserable.
How
And then,
far do you remember feeling that way?
oh, since I can remember, I've been in therapy since I was like age 5, and I know I've been diagnosed depression since age 11. So it's always been. I had a rough time growing up for sure. Um, just was never comfortable in my own skin, and always felt like I wasn't enough, and I had to like really push myself, and was always pushing myself to be better and better. But no matter how much I accomplished, it wasn't good enough. There was just like so much going on inside my brain at all times. Just a lot of anxiety too. But my sophomore year of college, I finally decided to take a drink, and it was crazy. The whole night The whole party became all about me. All these people were like, it's Cassie's first time drinking, and they're all handing me drinks, and they're all coming up to me and talking to me, and everybody's laughing. And I finally like, and I like came alive. I was like, this is the answer. This is what I've been missing. This is the answer to all my problems. Like now I see how everybody's getting along and laughing and having such an easy time relating to each other. From then on, like I was hooked. Like I used alcohol and drugs to go before I went anywhere, but I just was like, this is my crutch. Like I can't do anything without it now because this is clearly like what I've been missing my whole life.
How old were you?
I was 20 the time I took my first drink.
And so before that, like, was there any, like kind of escape tools that you had? Like you talked about, like kind of running to be alone or isolated, but, like, was there any, like you talked about, like the eating disorder, was that already kind of present in your life, or was there,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was beating myself up physically. I was bullying myself. Really, I started with my eating disorder behaviors when I was around 11, and have never been without them. Just always looking in the mirror and not liking what I saw, unable to look in the mirror, and just didn't feel like I was adequate, and didn't feel like I would just look at all the other people, and just all I would see is all the things that I don't have and all the things that they have that make them better than me, and all the ways that I lack. Like I just I grew up just surrounded with like in my brain of just like voices telling me like how much I lack. So like the eating disorder was an escape, and it was something that I had like control over, and it was something that I felt like was my little like secret in my back pocket that made me just gave me power.
In
really.
Control. Kind of in control, right?
Right. Definitely.
Like I'm nothing of a therapist, but like I have a few questions. What was the family picture like? Like I mean, in terms of any siblings?
Yeah, I'm the oldest actually of 3. So my brother is a year younger than me, and then my sister is 2 years younger than that. But my father actually left when I was 5, and we didn't really talk to him. He was not really a part of my life. There were a few times when I would like try to connect. We would try to connect, but he never showed up, and we'd always just be waiting. So there was like that abandonment. And then my mother was left with 3 kids to herself, and was under a lot of stress, and was hurt, I think, from my dad leaving and
doing her best. Like I mean, that must be crazy. Like even though like I mean. Yeah, because like I was just trying to figure out if like so you pretty much I think you pinpointed it like in the abandonment of it, but I was trying to figure out if there was some kind of like like a perception of perfection somewhere, like in terms of like you trying to, if you can't reach like or you feel like you're not enough, never. Was there example of like people that you would kind of look up to that look like they were perfect?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, definitely. So I never felt like anything I did was good enough for my mom. Her and I butted heads a lot, and she was really hard on me. So that weighed on me in a way that told me like everything I did wasn't good enough. So I ended up like overachieving, and ended up in all these clubs. I was doing theater, I was doing art, I was doing music, I was doing Model UN. But in theater especially, there's such a social dynamic there. I would look at all these people that had like lead roles, and were able to command the stage with such like grace and power, and I just looked up to them and always compared myself to them. They had great voices. I wished my voice was better. They could act. They were popular. They had boyfriends. And that was never me. I was always on the sideline, just feeling really stupid. And I always felt, even through doing all these clubs, like I even played field hockey, and I just felt like the definition of imposter syndrome. Like here I was, like performing all the actions and going through the motions, trying to look like I have it all together, trying to like compensate for like all the lack that I feel inside by forcing myself to be like as look as cool as possible on the outside. But I just always felt like an imposter, like I didn't really belong there. Like I looked at everybody else and they like just, it's like I clearly I'm not able to like really penetrate these groups of friends. I was like, I had the hardest time getting along, just not even getting along, but making friends with people on my field hockey team.
Always looking like at the third person, almost like looking like you were like you had a camera over your shoulder. And actually degrading you as you go along, like as you said, like you were like almost like a robot doing the motions, but at the same time just judging yourself and it's weird because like when I say it's weird, I mean some embraces that, like you see you talk to people that embrace being the outsider or the outlier, or like kind of the introvert that has, like, and will embrace, I don't know, like the goth or, like the punks and, like all these that they will embrace that, while your situation is just, you want to be part of, but you can't find a way or the key to, at least, I guess, like if you'd ask a few of those people at the time, they would say, no, she was great,
Right. I did a lot of like they call floating. So I was like friends with everybody, but I didn't really have any really close, consistent friends that I could relate to. So, and my mom didn't like us having people over. It was just I just had a really hard time with my childhood.
And so at 20, you take that first drink, you become center of attention, and it's like opening like Shazam, opening the doors.
I still I chased that feeling for the rest of my life, and I just never could get it again. That feeling was euphoric. I was just like, oh my God, this is it. Like how have I like been robbing myself of such an easy solution? It's been so easy the whole time. This is all I needed,
Yeah. Did, and you just, like you said a few minutes ago, but like it became almost a daily habit, I guess, quickly.
Oh yeah. It was, it started every weekend, and then it started like wasted wine Wednesdays or taco tequila Tuesdays. And then I was drinking before class. And then I had like a date with a guy, and I was drinking before the date, showing up drunk to parties already. And but even like months into my drinking, not even months, I was like overdosing and ending up in the hospital, waking up in the hospital, friends having to call ambulances because I was just unconscious. And, I was severing, I thought I was making friendships, but really what was happening was I was severing friendships left and right and making bonds with people that were supporting my bad habits. And I pushed all the good people out of my life really quickly. And I just wanted to keep people around that drank to my level, pretty much.
Did, my guess is that it must have impacted quickly your college years.
Yeah, it's funny because I actually did really well in college. Like my whole life, I put myself, I just forced myself to do a good job. I haven't been able to just like attack a a goal and just do a mediocre half-assed job. Like I set my mind to something and I do it. And even with drinking, I mean, was abusing some drugs, obviously. I managed to graduate pretty much top of my class and got a job right out of college. I wasn't even graduated before I had a job. And I was in a sorority. I was doing theater. It was kind of the same thing, but I've just always been like able to maintain a life, like functioning alcoholic, I guess I would call it. But it baffles me because it really, really got bad once I left college and once I was no longer around those people who were supporting my bad habits. Then I was just left alone to drink and use drugs by myself. And that was where the problem really, really started to get carried away.
Which drugs are we referring to here?
Pot, psychedelics, which I don't know. And then I would do a lot of Molly and cocaine and Adderall, which helped me through a lot of all-nighters.
Yeah, I just couldn't, remember the name, but it's Adderall is one that we don't know much about in my region. Even though I'm 45, so that was definitely something that we didn't know about when I was in school. Can you explain what Adderall does and how it helps? Because I know it is almost like a plague in college life. Mm-hmm. There's like an Adderall epidemic.
Yeah. So it's a prescription drug. It's a controlled substance, so you can't have it without a prescription. And it's prescribed for kids with ADHD and ADD. Mostly this is found in kids, but it is found in some young adults and even in some cases adult ADHD symptoms. But what it really is, when you break it down, is a methamphetamine, which is in the same family as meth itself. So it keeps you up for hours. It makes you not have to eat. A lot of people abuse it for losing weight. And yeah, it's the token like college best friend, because you take an Adderall and then suddenly you're writing like a 10-page paper overnight, and everything you write just is like, it helps you just get your ideas out. For me, it just helped me clear my mind, focus on what I needed to do, and get things done, because I was great at procrastinating.
Does it sobers you up? Like if you're drunk and you take it?
Yeah, I would say so. So that gets really dangerous too when you're mixing, then you don't really feel the effects of the alcohol you're drinking as much. So you think that you have to drink more and more, and then that definitely can lead to overdose. And I was doing that. I got really lucky, and I think a few times, like maybe that was why I was in the hospital so much, or meeting with the campus alcohol counselor.
Oh, already? So you had those meetings.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I was in a sorority, and we did socials with different fraternities on campus, and it was one of my first socials. It was my sophomore year, and I don't remember the night, and I woke up in the hospital, and I had to that was the first time I had to lie. I had to meet with campus alcohol counselors and tell them prove to them that I was okay. And I chalked it up, and I was like, it was a fluke. There were Jello shots. I didn't know. I'd never really drank before. But I was lying. That was the first time I ever lied to cover up the amount that I drank. And I would come to do that a lot to various doctors.
Was there, when you do that, I have a feeling that, it was, if you seem to remember this quite vividly, was there kind of, the even though, I'm guessing that, it's going to take a while before, you kind of, start trying to turn your life around. But was that the first few seeds or embryo planted into you of that shouldn't be the way life, like you live life?
Right. Right. Did I see like that I maybe did have a problem? I think at that point I didn't. I did just think that I had maybe miscalculated how much alcohol was in the drinks I was drinking. But I think the whole time I was in denial because to this day I say that I was definitely an alcoholic from the time I took my first drink, whether I knew it or not. I don't know, but I kept drinking, so clearly it didn't matter really.
Yeah, and like at the same time, like it's I do ask that question almost every time, even though like I totally understand. Like I was the same. Like you I remember fainted. I fainted in the car with my ex, the mother of my first two kids at the time. The two kids were actually in their baby seats in the back, and I fainted because I was fucking stoned. But not only that, I was hiding a lie at the time. And when she told me that, like the pressure was so high that just the fact of hiding the lie made me faint on a red light. And so, like anyone that's, like I would say, quote unquote, normal would imagine that would be kind of, like it has to be that day, But I remember the next day talking about food poisoning, talking about me not having, like I haven't ate enough. So, my stomach was empty. Like crying, I would like to say fake crying, but I was not fake crying. I was actually literally crying, but it was bullshit. Like it was me crying to cover up that I was stoned to the gills, so no, it wasn't, like it wasn't that day, even though, like I have flashes of, like I have memories of waking up or being, like the good old drunk promises of, like, this is the last time, blah, blah, blah. I remember having those thoughts of that can't be it, like that can't be, fuck, I'm going to die, like I'm, something will happen to me, like, so yeah, I tend to ask those questions, even though I know that for most of people, like until that last day when, like it's one drink too much or one, like one dose too much, that is that day, So, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
When you start to realize that like it is a problem and you can't stop drinking anyway or using, that's when you really start to suffer. Now, I remember the day I was graduated from college and I was living by myself and I was talking to my mom on the phone and she was like, you shouldn't be drinking by yourself. Like if you're drinking alone by yourself, you have a problem. And that was like the first time really that it like dawned on me that other people were noticing. And then like guilt started coming into play and like I knew deep down she was right, but I rationalized my way out of it. I was like, it's just wine and I'm just having it with dinner. But I mean, that wasn't the case.
And it's such a vicious cycle, right? Like you drink to forget that you feel guilty that you drink, like, which is bullshit. It's a downward spiral of just hell, like you want to, and you never can get drunk enough, like that's why, like I'm so, when did last week, I actually read someone, like it was a Facebook status of someone mentioning, it was something like, okay, I'm one full week clean now after, I don't know, I think it was a few months stint of relapse after 6 years clean. And I got chills and I told my wife and, like, she's not an addict And I told her, like I just read her the status, and I had chills, like, and she was like, "What does it, like, what does it do to you?" I'm like, "I'm scared shitless of relapse."
I know.
You know, I'm so worried about that. Like it scares me, and I'm happy that it scares me.
Yeah, for sure. I always say cunning, baffling, powerful, and then I add patient because it's always waiting for you. Like you can't ever let your guard down.
Yep. And it's I think, like fear, like in that situation is a great motivator. Because I never know, like I just never know. And, like it's even, like after, actually a few years in, I still am, like shaken by, like people, like when I read that, like I'm still, like I'm, it makes me sad. It makes me just scared. Like, and like I think some of the worst cases of people I've met are those that become not worried of relapsing, which is the most dangerous. I think it must be the most dangerous feeling I've have, like to have. And as you mentioned, like, so you were talking about, like kind of drinking to forget, and, like that you drink and, kind of that, and not forgiving yourself. So you drink enough, like to forget that anyways, like that cycle. My guess is that, like, as I learned, because, like I had never attended a meeting or knew about therapy or knew about, like I knew therapy exists, but, like I saw them in movies. And so, like it was always like a bunch of old drunken men in a basement, like, so it looked like so dark and, like just like it was like a shitty, dark place that people were always looking like homeless people. And so for me, it was weird, like, so therapy was sitting in circle and talking and in meetings were like the caricature of it, like, so, but after I was given the key to sobriety, kind of, like kind of the toolbox of sobriety, I was always worried that, relapse would make me discredit that toolbox. And that what was worth me the most, like that is still to this day, what, keeps me sober is the fact that, like I never want to discredit the toolbox that I have, so yeah.
No, that makes total sense. You never want to like let people down. Also, like the people that you surround yourself with that give you the toolbox, you're just like
As well. Yeah.
It's like a thing of ego, I guess. It's like I cannot relapse. I can't see you. I can't have you see me like this,
Yes, and there's definitely something around the now I know, like, so now I know that it's not only feasible, but it's not that hard. Like there are tougher days for sure, but what I mean is that 15 years in, I can tell you that it's mostly easy, like, so, and I would say that, like, cause I've had my share of, like, mourning and, like death in the family, like all kinds of shitty situation, going through them, cold, like sober is much easier, way easier. Because much more quickly, you know, like you kind of just lay it down and figure it out, like while stoned and drunk, like you just swirl and it's just a swirl of shit, like you never get out, like you can almost drown into it. So, yeah, I mean, like, so now having the key to it, like I would, like it scares me a lot, like it worries me a lot that, like, after, like, so yeah, that lady after 6 years, like you get into, kind of a, like a stint of relapse of a few months, like, yeah. Anyways, like, so all to say, what happens next? Like my guess is that, like now you're home alone, you're home alone and, you can do whatever you want, whenever you want. this must be just like a downhill situation for you.
Yeah, well, it could be. But I decided when I was in treatment that I was never going to go back to my desk job again, because for me, working, despite having a degree, working behind a desk was killing me. Like, I was crying in the fetal position on the bathroom floor, on the stall, in the stall, like the public stall. I I was like drinking at work. It was not for me. So what I did was I made up my mind that I was not going to go back there. And I've always loved drawing and art, and I've never really gotten to, while I was drinking all through my 20s, like I would try to do art, but I would just get too drunk to finish any projects, and nothing that came out was good. Um, but this past August, what happened was my sister asked me to draw a picture of her and her dog. And I did that and posted it on Facebook. And then I got a few inquiries overnight. And then within a week, I had like 10 inquiries. And now I've got a list of like 25 portraits. I'm doing people's pets. So people are asking me to draw custom portraits of their pets, their cats and dogs. And I've been doing that pretty much for full-time work all day, every day. I wake up, I have a clear mind. I take my medications as prescribed. And then I make myself a pot of coffee, and I just go to work drawing, and I am happy, and I'm able to focus, and I don't need any substances to get me through that. Like, I have a huge list right now of portraits that I need to finish before Christmas for Christmas gifts. So
Can you bring me to, like that day where you've had enough, like that you turned your life around?
oh yeah. So, well, geez. I was in treatment. I was in outpatient, and I was dealing with my eating disorders too. I was gaining weight rapidly, but I was binging and I was purging, and I was like storing garbage bags of like vomit under my bed and forgetting about them. And I was so miserable. I didn't want to live. Like, I was closet drinking because I had tried to go to a rehab up in upstate New York in January of 2019. And I only stayed sober like 2 months because I was in this awful polyamorous relationship where I was living with a couple that had been together 7 years, and they were great people, but it just wasn't for me, and it was tearing me up inside. So I was miserable in my relationship. I couldn't look in the mirror because I had gained so much weight. I was eating uncontrollably. I was miserable at my job, drinking at work, and closet drinking, like driving around town to throw away my bottles at different garbage dumps. And it was just exhausting, and trying to go to work and trying to get enough alcohol in me to carry me through a day it wasn't working anymore. And I was trying to go to this outpatient treatment, but they caught the alcohol in my urine, and they approached me and said that they knew that I was drinking, and I tried to deny it, and they knew better and said, you need to go to rehab again. We're sending you back. And I was like, well, I really can't. But I asked work if I could leave again, and they were really, really upset. They didn't like it. And I knew that, like, at that point, that job was not for me, because they didn't really understand, like, the fact that I would relapse after they already had given me 2 months off to go to rehab. So this was my second rehab, but instead of going upstate New York, I went to Swift River in Massachusetts. That was in June. So on June 14th, 2019 was my admission date. And that place was incredible. And I'm sober till this day.
did what made it different? Like what was different from the first time that you went in therapy? Like there's like it's not the first time that I hear that, but like what made it different this time?
A couple things did. I think the quality of the treatment there, it was rather than being really, really strict and just meetings from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., there were activities included. So we got to do art, we got to do nature walks, disc golf, rock climbing courses. I got to just really like paint. I wasn't even allowed to bring pencils and a pen or in a notebook to my first rehab, to put that in perspective. It was just a really nice place. But then I think the bigger thing that made it different this time was, instead of going right back home to Syracuse in the same job, I left the job and I left the couple and I left Syracuse and I said, I'm going to California and I'm going to do aftercare. So I went straight into PHP in California, Southern California, and just a treatment center with a sober living house attached to it. So I lived in their sober living and I attended groups all day. I did that for a year, and I just kept myself in sober living and I surrounded myself with sober people. They say don't go back to people, places, and things. So I just, going back to Syracuse, I knew that wasn't going to work because I was just going to start drinking again. And it kept me, we had to, get urinalysis every other day. So that kept me honest, but it worked for me. So I'm glad I went there. And yeah.
Was what kind of plan, like, I mean, like in terms of, because I'm hearing that, like you were attacking a few things, like on your plate, like the eating disorder and the substance abuse, and you talk that, like you're on a prescription for, kind of, like balancing, like stuff, like that are prescribed now. Like what kind of action plan can you elaborate a bit on, like how did they approach this in terms of, like, do they touch on the substance abuse first? Like how do they, like what was their angle of approaching this?
Well, they set you up with a case manager who sets you up with a medical doctor nearby. So they monitor like your physical health, and then they set you up with a psychiatrist who monitors your medications and reassesses them if you're on them. They set you up with a drug that's called naltrexone, which is an opioid blocker, and it helps with cravings for alcohol and opiates. And from there, other than the sober living and the urine screenings every 2 days, we just attend groups. They could be on anything from, so groups are like, they could be on anything from like the science of addiction and relapse prevention to like just basic human development, like human interaction, just communication skills, like boundaries and being assertive and how to confront conflict. We just do a lot of hands-on things too, and they offer a family program. They offer a whole weekend actually of therapy, one-on-one therapy with your counselor and your family in question. My mom and I did it, and it totally changed our relationship, like for the better. It was really cool. Yeah, and
I need you, Cassie, to elaborate on that, because like I this was offered, like at the time when I did therapy, and like I want you to just tell our listeners, like how important that is, and like what it consists of, because like I spent a lot of time trying to explain that actually to my mom, like that, like it was a sickness, and like, but yeah, I'd love to hear your take on, like the benefit of, like having your family participate in that.
Yeah. So in a lot of cases, the family just can't understand and they feel really helpless, and they've tried and it just baffles them that no matter what, like no matter all the pain that it's causing, like you just keep going back to it. And so it's really helpful for them to get the education behind the science of addiction and behind the reasons why the brain wires itself the way it does, um, the way it stops producing its own dopamine and oxytocin. But aside from that, it's like, let's lay out all of our resentments toward each other. Let's lay out a list of everything that we want to apologize for. And then let's end the weekend with a list of everything that we love about each other. And so I really got to see a glimpse, like a really, really personal glimpse of this disease from my mom's perspective. And I knew it hurt her, and I knew she'd seen some shit. And she's been there for me. I got really lucky because a lot of parents or guardians just give up, kick the addict out of the house and out of the family. They just don't get it. And my mom really wanted to get it, so she participated in this when it was an option. She didn't have to, and we laid out a lot of our vulnerabilities, and I said sorry for all the shit that I put her through, and she apologized for a lot of things that happened when I was a kid, and there was a lot of tears, and she just now she knew how sorry I was, and she knows that I couldn't really. It's a disease. Like, I was trying my best,
And
it's nice to have the professionals there, like guiding the whole thing, telling her.
You need a mediator.
Yeah.
You need someone in the middle of that, because sometimes like you're given the tools, like of kind of clearing the air and like explaining yourself, but you absolutely need someone like in the middle ground, in a neutral position to just lay things down, and sometimes just say, okay, let's take just like a breather here. Let's take a break. Mm-hmm. And, cause there are no, it's so emotional, like there's so much stuff in there, I think to that day, my mom died, like the first week of the pandemic, like the first few, the second weeks of March, and, thanks. And there, I think, to this day, like she was just like, so you're never gonna have a drink again, right? Like I was like, no, at least not today, like so.
Yeah, not today.
And but those sessions are almost as important as having the full toolbox for yourself. Like it's crazy important. So yeah, I'm glad you explained it, because like I think there are people that like have been missing that, and like if it's not through therapy, at least find a mediator or someone that's going to be in a neutral position for you to vent out, all of these things, so it's better not be alone doing that.
Right. And the same goes for loved ones, like significant others and husband, wife, not just your parents,
Yeah, absolutely. And so you told us a bit about the kind of nowadays, like how like are things going? But is there like a daily like kind of a daily diet, and those are not bad puns here. Daily, like a daily schedule of stuff that you need to do to keep yourself, like to keep your sobriety sane and, like healthy? What would be, like your typical day like?
Yeah, so sleep is really, really important. I try to get as much sleep as my body wants. I meditate a lot. I use an app on my phone called Insight Timer, and they have hundreds of free meditations. You can sort by anxiety, depression, motivation, if you're looking for sleep stories or just people to read off affirmations to you. Meditation is a really important tool in my kit right now. I'll meditate for a couple hours each day. Honestly, I know that seems a lot, but I started smaller. So it's like 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes around lunchtime. And then like I meditate myself to sleep because sometimes my thoughts are so loud. But, you know, having my mom around really helps. Doing art and knowing I have things I need to accomplish really helps. Staying in touch with friends via social media. I like to keep an active social media presence, and I like to be really transparent about my addictions so people can see that it's okay and there shouldn't be a stigma. Like I have a lot of people that reach out and say like, thank you so much for sharing. Like they ask me advice and stuff, but when it comes to like practical things, like I keep seltzer water on hand at all times, and I'm always drinking coffee. And you know, you have to take time out of yourself for self-care, and sometimes I'm not so great at it, but like there's times where I get really stuck in my head and I my feelings just start to take over and my depression gets crazy and I'm crying and I can't seem to manage my emotions, and I just have to reset. And sometimes that just takes me taking a shower, as simple as taking a shower, doing a meditation, and then like watching something that just makes me feel good on Netflix. I have a whole list of books too. I have a whole stack of books that I read through, like a lot of self-help books and a lot of like workbooks. I have workbooks on trauma and boundaries that I work through when I have the time, but it's a lot of art. I do meetings online, of course, and then yeah, it just
Would you say that? Would you say that your, like the social media presence adds a layer of accountability in there?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, definitely. When I was recovering, when I got back from my eating disorder treatment, I had been transparent about my alcoholism and my addictions before, but I never thought I would be transparent about my eating disorders. And I decided to put myself out there and let people know. And that was in large part me being accountable. And yeah, I mean, me putting the fact that I am sober out there and updating my followers with sobriety milestones, like means I can never go back out with any of my friends and say like, hey, you want to get a drink? Because they'll be like, what are you talking about? Like I'd have to find all new friends, like, and I'm not good at that. So it's huge for accountability.
Yeah. And, like that's something that, yeah, you actually make yourself accountable because you present yourself as, having like like a sober life, like so it would be definitely, like there's a higher price to pay almost to like just not only failing yourself, but like having a feeling of failing others that are, like I've had people reaching out telling me that, like even the podcast has helped them, like so I would feel like there's a feeling of, like you talked about the imposter, like I would be, it would be weird for me, like to think about, like having a drink or, like
Right.
recording this tone, that would be fucked up, like, so, Oh, hey, sorry, but like I just smoked a big fat joint. Like that would be just, welcome to cold turkey. I'm high. Like that, that wouldn't work. So, and yeah, I mean, like that podcast has helped me in ways that I would have never figured out. Like I think that like my sobriety was pretty stable. Like I have like I have my home, like is just a nest of love, like there, like there's nothing that, like has shaken, my sobriety, like, and I've learned, I will always remember someone, her name was Marianne, like, and thanks to her, because, like I remember reading, NA has like, kind of a guidebook of working the steps. And, one question was around step one, which is, like feeling powerless over your addiction. And that question was what could happen that would make you relapse? Like what would be the worst thing that, like what's the worst thing that could happen in your life? Like the death of a relative, or, like whatever would be that, like you would consider a reason enough to relapse. And I remember she right there said, nothing will lower myself down to a relapse.
Right.
And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. That's the best angle I would have ever described it. Cause like you start thinking about it. It's like, yeah. Like if my, like the time, like if, like my father dies, like if my mom dies, like, and you start thinking about that. And then as she answered, nothing could come, like nothing would be, like tough enough or hard enough or that I would lower myself to a relapse. I was like, holy shit. Okay. She's got the best answer ever. And, I'm always going to be grateful for that answer, because it's actually it, like there's nothing, but at the same time, like adding it's not pressure, like some wouldn't see that as pressure. I think it's not pressure. It's really accountability for it. Like you want to, if you do it first for yourself, like you can add other folks in there, and like it's okay,
Right. I'm definitely where she is too. I mean, one day at a time, right? But I don't think there's anything that could happen that relapsing and drinking wouldn't make worse. They say it's like throwing gasoline on an open fire.
Yeah.
So,
and
now I don't think.
So dangerous, like it's like I said, like there are so many people that you don't see again, like especially the pandemic has done that, like where you hear about, like or you don't see people online that like you saw in meeting rooms, and it makes you wonder, like where are they? Are they doing better? Yeah, I mean, like it's just it's crazy.
It's definitely crazy.
Last thing, for our listeners, like you just talked about it, but like where can people find you?
That's a great question. I am on Instagram, cassangerosa.art.art. It's my first name, which is Cass, Cass, and then my last name, which is spelled anger, OSA. So it's cassangerosa.art on Instagram. And then I have a Facebook. I'm Cassie Angerosa on Facebook. You're welcome to friend me. And then I have my Facebook business page, which is for my pet portraits. So if you search pet portraits by Cassie, that should come up. And Cassie is Cassie, not Y.
Perfect. And for those that are listening, Casey is going to provide me with all these links, and they're going to be found in the description of the episodes right below. If you're listening to it to any platform you're listening to it, the description is going to contain all of the links. So just don't press pause and take notes. Like it's all in there. thanks a lot for your time, Cassie. Like really, like I appreciate every single one of the guests and the people that I reach out to that, like are mostly strangers right now, like people that don't know me and they don't know about the podcast. And, as you did, like everyone, like most of the people that I reach out to are accepting, and it's, not only humbling and flattering, it's just, like it's an amazing journey for me. Like I am impressed by the community of, like the sobriety community, just like accepting this and sharing their story. And, like almost every week I have my share of people reaching out and telling me that, that thing is helping them. And, and you're now part of that. So thanks. Really, thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Thanks for reaching out. It was a pleasure.
It was a blast. Thanks. And stay safe, and we'll have probably a chance to talk soon. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye.